hear about Mexican drug cartels, Minnesota likely isn't top of mind. But there have been not one, but two cases allegedly involving those cartels in our state in just the past 5 days.
8 o'clock in the morning in Minneapolis, the raid on the office of Diplomat Safia Abdiwarsam revealed a shocking truth. Behind the image of a compassionate ambassador were 24 mysterious crates, enormous stacks of cash, and an underground network worth $186 million. As the cargo ship carrying 120 innocent lives left the port, the race against time officially began. Can diplomatic immunity cover up crimes for 12 years? The darkest truth is about to be exposed right now. At 8 o'clock in the morning in the city of Minneapolis, federal agents conducted a raid on the private office of Diplomat Safia Abdiwarsam. By 8:12 in the morning, the atmosphere at the consulate still carried the calm and solemn dignity it always had. The polished floors, the neatly hung framed portraits, and the characteristic quiet of diplomatic protocol enveloped the space. However, when the agents opened the door to Safia Abdiwarsam's private office, the atmosphere immediately changed, becoming heavier, and the truth had nowhere left to hide. Behind the luxurious desk were 24 black crates marked with symbols of a transnational criminal organization, stacked upon one another with the confidence of a habit repeated many times. A handgun was carefully hidden in a velvet-lined drawer. A silver suitcase sat right beside it, filled with cash that no honest life could explain. For many years, Safia had been praised as a bridge between cultures, a voice for compassion, for community, and for goodwill. But in that room, the illusion shattered. This was not diplomatic activity. By 10:47 in the morning, the admiration for her had vanished, replaced by spreadsheets, traces of bank transactions, and totals far too large to ignore. On the evidence table were records of 12 years of financial movements, with more than $186 million funneled through charitable grants, cultural funds, and community outreach programs that existed only on paper. What had once appeared so generously in public now revealed a second life, one carefully designed in silence. There were as many as 37 shell organizations and more than 420 wire transfers disguised as funding support. The money flowed through 5 states and 3 countries, converging into the same hidden accounts used to move illegal shipments through protected diplomatic channels. The community programs were not relief efforts. They were leverage. The donations were not compassion. They were keys opening doors to city agencies and local organizations. The deeper the investigators delved, the clearer the truth became. This was not a diplomat serving the community. This was a system, and she was the one orchestrating every movement of it. If these numbers leave you stunned, show your support so this truth can spread even wider. This was a sophisticated machine in operation, not merely the actions of a lone individual. By 3:26 in the afternoon, Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport still appeared normal, with suitcases rolling, gentle announcements, and passengers disappearing into the terminals unnoticed by anyone. But one figure stood out more than the rest. Safia Abdiwarsam arrived at the departure gate with diplomatic immunity credentials, a first-class ticket, and a suitcase carrying unwavering determination. Her flight was scheduled to leave the country within the next hour. She didn't flee, she moved like someone who had escaped before. Federal agents only closed in after a final alert was sent to the command desk. A maritime signal linked to her name was activated. A cargo manifest was flagged 3 hours after departure. A vessel registered under Safia's corporate network left port and pushed deep into international waters. Its cargo did not list standard shipments, but rather discrete consignments routed through the same network. And beneath the sealed cargo manifest was a number that made the entire room feel suffocating. 120 missing children were in the process of being transported. Her arrest had prevented an escape, but the clock had begun counting down elsewhere. By 9:58 in the evening, the coastline had vanished into the darkness, and the only thing breaking the calm surface of the water was a cargo ship steadily advancing toward international waters. It had been at sea for more than 3 hours, and 3 hours was enough for the ship to drift beyond normal reach. That period of time was enough for the people on the ship to disappear forever if the next decision was made too late. Inside the Federal Command Room, the atmosphere was tense as new data continuously poured in. Thermal scans confirmed movement on the upper decks. Intercepted conversations indicated the presence of a private security force. They were not amateurs, but 60 hired guns equipped with advanced rifles and modern launchers. These were individuals accustomed to operating in places where witnesses never returned. The United States could not afford hesitation. The FBI, DEA, DHS, and United States Coast Guard had activated a combined strike package reserved only for missions where time is measured in heartbeats. 5 stealth drones took off, gliding through cloud layers like silent predators. 30 interceptor drones equipped with jamming devices followed, forming a protective net ahead of the tactical teams. 2 escort destroyers repositioned offshore. A submarine slipped beneath the waves toward the ship's blind spot, and on the surface, fast response vessels prepared for the most dangerous phase, boarding. The order was issued not as a dramatic countdown. It was just a single sentence. Move in. Prioritize protecting the victims first. Data feeds from the first drones showed the mercenaries spread across key points like stairwells, cargo hatches, and observation railings. They were not panicking, but preparing to engage. Floodlights snapped on, shadows shifted, positions tightened, and then contact occurred. The fast approach vessels surged forward as the drones dropped into precise orbits, mapping every angle of the ship in real time. The Coast Guard teams hooked onto the ship's hull, climbing up with flawless coordination. A strong gust pushed back against them, but not a single agent slowed down. Every second wasted on the outside was a second those inside did not have. Inside the main deck, the teams split up. One group cleared the crew quarters, another advanced toward the reinforced cargo hold. The mercenaries responded with cold efficiency, rapidly repositioning, forcing the agents to adapt under pressure. One federal operator was hit while advancing, but refused evacuation, continuing to shield a trembling group of people behind a bulkhead. The seconds stretched on. Breaths grew shallow. Commands crackled over radios like sparks. The fight was not spread out, but compressed into corridors and doorways until the momentum shifted. The drones overhead had released jamming devices at pre-marked points, sealing off the enemy's final escape routes. In 15 breathless minutes, 9 armed subjects were neutralized, and the remaining forces surrendered under overwhelming pressure. And finally, the sound the entire operation had been waiting for rang out. All 120 children are safe. Repeat, all are safe. In that moment, the ocean itself seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The danger was not over, the network behind it still existed. But tonight, they had won. 15 minutes had rewritten the fate of 120 lives. By 12:12 in the morning, the cargo ship that had once headed toward a dark destination now lay still alongside a federal pier. Floodlights swept across its steel hull, revealing dents, rope marks, and the desperate traces of a journey intended to erase 120 young lives. But the true weight of that night was not measured by the distance the ship had traveled, but by what the federal teams found as they began a thorough search. One by one, the exhausted and bewildered children were gently carried toward the medical tents. Some were too weary to speak, others clung tightly to the jackets of the agents who had risked everything for them. That sight changed the mood on the pier. The victory was real, but the price of how close the United States had come to losing them was equally stark. The interior of the ship told a different story. Cold, calculated, and industrial. Behind the reinforced cargo hold doors, investigators found a 3-tier detention structure welded into the ship's frame. Each tier contained rows of small compartments barely large enough for one person to sit, but not stand. The metal latches had been installed recently. The ventilation holes were covered with coarse mesh. No names were written anywhere, only numbers. It was a transportation system, not an accident or chaos, but a meticulously planned operation. In the engine room, agents discovered a waterproof tablet still powered on. Its final transmission log was crystal clear. 120 units confirmed, expected arrival time at the buyer's location in 19 hours. The number did not surprise the entire room because they already knew the count. What shocked them was the last line: next shopping window in 14 days. This was not a one-off operation. This was a supply chain. To grasp the full scale of it, the forensic teams began unloading the containers stacked in the aft section of the ship. What they cataloged stretched across 3 long tables. Documents revealed 12 prior voyages tied to shell companies under Safia's control. GPS logs from ports in 5 countries. Payment records linked to cryptocurrency wallets worth $41 million. International correspondence hinting at buyers expecting deliveries on a fixed schedule. And then came the darkest discovery. A sealed folder wrapped in plastic hidden behind a panel inside the captain's cabin. Inside it were records of 311 missing children from states across the United States, spanning from Minnesota to Virginia. Many files were marked with blue check symbols, others tagged with red question marks. Taken together, the folder was undeniable evidence. What do you think about the fact that a diplomatic cover could conceal a $186 million criminal network for 12 years? Safia's network had been operating long before this ship left the port. The agents reviewing the documents fell silent. Even the most seasoned among them, those who had encountered illegal networks before, had never seen one so tightly wrapped in diplomatic protection. Safia had not merely opened doors for crime, she had built corridors where no questions could legally be asked. On the ship's deck, the last of the young children were finally carried onto Coast Guard transport units, wrapped in blankets, shielded from the flashing lights, and cared for with a gentleness starkly different from the brutality they had endured. Each child represented a life pulled back from the abyss, a life that the federal team refused to abandon. And as the very last one was brought off the ship, an agent quietly spoke words that echoed across the pier. This was not just a rescue, but the prevention of something unimaginable. By 6:40 in the morning, after the rescued children had been taken to safety and the cargo ship had been sealed under federal authority, the investigation shifted from the ocean to a different kind of battlefield, one of paperwork. In a fortified federal operations center, analysts, financial agents, and anti-crime units gathered around screens glowing with data. The question was no longer who Safia was. That answer had already been laid bare in detail. The real question was how far her network reached and who else had helped her build it. As the agents began pulling the digital threads, the system unraveled faster than anyone had expected. Safia's influence had not been built through fear or force. It had been built through access, the kind of access that only diplomacy could grant. Her financial records revealed 37 shell funds. But now a larger pattern had emerged. 9 nonprofit organizations based in the United States, all legally registered, all receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars each year, and all funneling portions of that money into accounts linked to international operators. From there, the network spread even wider. City records showed that Safia had attended more than 240 closed-door meetings with local officials, community leaders, and administrative directors. The agenda notes often appeared harmless. Phrases like partnership development, resource allocation, support for vulnerable youth. But when paired with the financial trails, it became clear that those meetings were transactional, an exchange of goodwill for silence. And then the darkest discovery arrived. Inside a seized laptop from Safia's office, agents uncovered correspondence written in neutral language, phrases that sounded like logistics planning rather than criminal coordination. But once decoded, every message referred to the movement of assets, inventory, or units. The timestamps matched events across 5 countries. Some messages were sent just minutes before the ship departed or before individuals vanished. More subpoenas were issued. More files were declassified. More names emerged, including assistants, advisors, cultural experts, and even 2 mid-level local officials who had received contributions totaling nearly $1.3 million over several years. Each revelation expanded the scope of the investigation. Each discovery clarified the depth of Safia's infiltration into legitimate systems. The woman arrested at the airport was not merely fleeing justice, she was fleeing exposure because the empire she had built was not made of walls or weapons, but of trust. As dawn broke over Minnesota, the city looked unchanged. Commuters filled the streets, shop lights flickered on, and the bustle of daily routine returned as if the previous night had been nothing more than a passing storm. But inside the Federal Command Center, no one mistook normality for stability. The rescue, the arrests, the evidence, all of it had illuminated a truth far larger than Safia herself. For the first time, investigators could see the shape of the machine she had built. And for the first time, they understood how long it had existed in plain sight. As the agents worked through the final hours of the operation, a pattern emerged from the newly unlocked files. Safia had not chosen her collaborators randomly. Everyone drawn into her orbit, whether through bribes, favors, or promises, held a specific position within the system. One approved permits, another served as a community liaison, a cultural program director, a school administrator, even two transportation officials who had approved logistics routes without a single inspection. Each role, when viewed in isolation, appeared harmless. But together, they formed a seamless network of access so complete that no warning signs ever surfaced. The numbers confirmed the scale, with 311 files cross-referenced against activity at ports in 5 countries. 12 voyages documented, each disguised under legitimate shipping manifests. More than $41 million circulated through accounts designed to make the money vanish the moment it appeared. And beneath it all was a structure carefully built to survive even if one piece was removed. But the assault on the cargo ship accomplished far more than rescuing 120 lives. It destabilized the entire network. By mid-morning, tip lines were flooded with reports. Former associates stepped into the light, first silently, then openly. Bank employees reported suspicious transactions they had once overlooked because they appeared to be charitable. A former assistant provided details about closed-door meetings where Safia insisted she must attend alone. A local official confessed that he had never understood the true purpose behind the emergency youth resettlement funds that she had pressured him to approve. The city that had once been silent was now beginning to speak. And as those voices rose, an unavoidable truth came into sharp focus. Safia Abdulwarsam had not merely manipulated the system, she had relied on its blind spots. Those were the places where trust was assumed. Documents sailed through unchecked, and titles carried more weight than oversight. Her arrest did not collapse the world she had built, but it exposed its skeleton, a map of vulnerabilities woven into the very organizations that people trusted every day. While the federal team celebrated the lives saved, they also confronted a deeper and heavier realization. If one diplomat could bend entire community structures to her will, then how many other systems might have been compromised without anyone noticing? By early afternoon, as the agents filed their final reports, a quiet settled over the operations room. The screens dimmed, evidence bins were sealed, voices faded. The exhilaration of the night had dissipated, leaving only the weight of what had been prevented and what had been uncovered. A senior investigator with decades of service summed it up plainly. Stopping her was not the final victory, but a warning. A warning that danger no longer lurks in alleys or abandoned warehouses. It hides in offices, in charitable organizations, in diplomatic signatures, and in systems built on trust. Safia has been detained. The victims are safe, but the nation has been shown an unforgettable truth. Sometimes the darkest threats are not the criminals we see, but the institutions we never suspect. As the final reports were filed and the lights inside the federal command room gradually dimmed, one truth lingered longer than any document or testimony. What had unfolded in this case was not merely a criminal investigation, it was a strategic rupture. A moment when a hidden system collided head-on with accountability. This operation was not simply about rescuing people, it exposed a vulnerability that had existed within the very organizations everyone had trusted for years. Diplomacy, charity, and community leadership are titles that are supposed to protect the innocent, but instead they were turned into weapons to shield an empire operating in the shadows. And that is where the true consequences lie, because networks like this do not survive solely through violence. They endure through trust, reputation, and unchecked authority. They thrive in places where documents are approved without question, where signatures carry more weight than scrutiny, and where influence is mistaken for virtue. It posed a question no one could ignore. If one diplomat could build corridors that no one questioned, then how many other corridors still exist? This case reminds us that protection does not come from assuming good intentions. It comes from asking the hard questions, even when the answers are uncomfortable. It comes from oversight, from accountability, from the courage to look beneath polished surfaces and ceremonial titles. And above all, it reinforces a timeless truth. Evil does not always hide in the shadows. Sometimes it stands in bright light, cloaked in respectability. Truth and justice always require vigilant oversight from the community. The greatest lesson from this story is vigilance in the face of glamorous facades. We often readily place trust in prestigious titles or charitable organizations, forgetting that oversight is a vital lifeline. Sophisticated crime does not always hide in the shadows. It can exist right under the spotlight of justice through perfectly legal paperwork. Do not let reputation obscure the truth. Maintaining a critical spirit and demanding transparency in every organization is the best way to protect the community from underground systems that silently exploit human trust. The case of Safia Abdiwarsam was not just an ordinary takedown, it was a wake-up call about the corruption hidden behind veils of power. When trust is weaponized, the most respected organizations become safe havens for darkness. 120 children were saved, but questions about systemic vulnerabilities remain. Are we placing too much faith in titles while forgetting the need for rigorous daily oversight? Leave a comment with the word "system" if you believe that all power requires transparent accountability. Don't forget to share this video so the truth can spread and help protect the vulnerable.